Welcome to the Explainer. Next time you're cruising down a supermarket aisle, take a really close look at the shelves. You might just see a simple display of groceries, right? But what you are actually looking at is a massive, unseen strategic chess game. For decades, those products carrying the retailer's own name, you know the ones, they were viewed as basic, no-frills alternatives to the famous brands we all grew up with. But while we were filling our shopping carts, those generic products evolved, big time. Today, we're decoding how American store brands completely transformed from simple budget options into heavy-hitting corporate powerhouses. Let's get into it. To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this change, we got to look at the numbers. In 2025, U.S. shoppers bought a staggering $282.8 billion worth of store brand products across all retail outlets. I mean, wow! This verified figure from the Private Label Manufacturers Association tells us one very clear thing. We are definitely no longer talking about a minor niche grocery trend. This is a colossal structural shift in the very foundation of American retail. Okay, let's dive into this. When we look at unit share, which just means the actual physical number of items being scanned at the checkout, store brands hit a record 23.5% in 2025. That is nearly 1 out of every 4 items sold. Now, it's super important to note that national brands still comfortably hold the majority of the market, driving 76.5% of unit sales. But that nearly 24% share, that proves private labels have officially established themselves as a permanent major force on the shelf. Section 1. The shift, from generic to giant. So this shift isn't just about market size today, it's really about the velocity of change. Look at these 2025 growth rates. Store brand dollar sales grew by 3.3%. That is nearly 3 times as fast as the 1.2% growth seen by national brands. To put that momentum into perspective, over the last 5 years alone, store brand dollar sales shot up by approximately $64.8 billion. That is a massive transfer of retail spending in a very short amount of time. Consumer acceptance and quality. Now, we have to look past the billions of dollars for a second and get into the consumer psychology. It begs a question we all quietly ask ourselves when we're staring at a famous logo versus a store brand label. Are store brands actually worse? I mean, we often just assume the famous brand inherently tastes better or works better simply because, well, we recognize the name, right? Well, a peer-reviewed study published in the journal Marketing Science put this exact question to the test. They asked consumers to evaluate products, and an overwhelming 81% of participants rated the private label foods as good as the national brands when the shiny marketing and familiar logos were completely hidden. 81%. Here's how they did it. This study conducted in-store blind taste tests comparing Mariano's private label, Roundy's, directly against leading national brands in categories like cookies, Greek yogurt, and ice cream. And what they found was a massive gap between consumer expectations and reality. Check this out. Before tasting, only 44% of people predicted they would pick the store brand. But after actually tasting the food blind, 72% preferred the store brand. It proves that in many categories, store brand quality has become highly credible. Actually, often the biggest barrier to purchase is literally just the branding itself. The hidden business. And this brilliantly illustrates how retailers are actually pulling this off. They aren't suddenly becoming master bakers or dairy farmers overnight. It's usually a 3-step system. Step 1, the retailer defines the exact product specifications, quality standards, and packaging. Step 2, a third party or contract manufacturer actually produces the item to those exact specs. And step 3, the retailer completely controls the branding, the shelf placement, and the commercial strategy. This setup allows retailers to create entire portfolios of brands without having to literally own hundreds of manufacturing facilities. It's pretty genius. But here is perhaps the most surprising revelation of the entire industry. An absolute I never knew that moment. You might assume there are generic factories making generic goods and premium factories making premium goods, right? Well, academic research from Dartmouth's Tuck School of Business confirms that some national brand manufacturers actually participate in private label production. Yeah, the very supply chains that create household name brands are sometimes the exact same supply chains utilized by retailers to create their own brands. The retailer strategic advantage. So why do retailers invest so much time and money into creating these brands? For you and me, the consumer, the benefit is clear. You get a differentiated store experience and an exclusive assortment of products you literally can't get anywhere else. But the corporate benefit, that's where the real power lies. Store brands aren't just products on a shelf. They are strategic tools that grant retailers upstream bargaining leverage over their suppliers. So the crucial point is this. Research from the Tuck School of Business confirms the real power play here. When a retailer has a highly successful, high-quality store brand sitting right next to a national brand, the retailer suddenly has leverage. It forces national brand manufacturers to offer the retailer better wholesale prices and better deals just to stay competitive on that shelf. The store brand fundamentally changes the negotiation dynamics right there in the boardroom.
Real-world retailer examples.
Let's ground this with a real example. Take Walmart. Their flagship private brand, Great Value, is currently found in 9 out of 10 American households. That's huge. But they aren't resting on their laurels. They treat it like a strategic powerhouse, recently announcing a massive, modern redesign across almost 10,000 Great Value food and consumable items. At the same time, they're launching entirely new owned brands, like Better Goods, to capture different consumer tastes. They treat their private labels with the exact same strategic rigor as any global consumer packaged goods company. To see the end game of this strategy, look at this staggering number from Target: $30 billion. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that this is the annual revenue generated solely by Target's portfolio of owned brands: $30 billion. To put that in perspective, if Target's owned brands were spun off into a completely separate, standalone company, it would be one of the largest consumer goods companies in the entire world. That means approximately 1/3 of Target's entire annual sales rely on its portfolio of more than 40 exclusive brands. We're talking everything from groceries and activewear to home goods. This isn't just a side project for them. It is a foundational pillar of their entire business model. The new balance of power. Looking impartially at this new competitive reality, the sky is not falling for traditional manufacturers. National brands still firmly dominate the majority of the market share, and they absolutely drive deep consumer loyalty and innovation. But the balance of retail power has permanently shifted. Store brands have evolved from being mere shelf fillers into vital, strategic competitors that raise the market pressure across every single aisle. So to wrap this up, store brands are no longer simply generic alternatives. They have become critical corporate assets. So the next time you see a store brand sitting beside a famous name, I want you to remember this. You're not just looking at two products. You are looking at two entirely different business models, utilizing the exact same supply chains, competing for the exact same space in your shopping cart. Which model will you choose on your next grocery run?